Hey everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night maybe, wherever you are around the world. My name is Nick Freiling. I am the Director of InsightsHub here at Question Pro. Now, InsightsHub is an insights repository product. It's for organizing, sharing, and democratizing your insights. But what we're going to talk about today is how to how to conduct a market research survey for your startup idea. Startups is something that I'm very passionate about. I spent a lot of time over the past several years working on my own startup, and I did a lot of market research, a lot of survey work as part of that enterprise, as part of that effort. It was actually a survey market research agency, and I did conduct a lot of surveys for startups. I learned a lot about what works and what doesn't when it comes to conducting market research for your startup idea. So I'm going to pull up some slides here. One second. Um, you should see my screen here in a second, but what we're going to do today is walk through the step by step of how to conduct a market research survey for your startup idea. Now, whether or not you are in the launch phase, ideation phase, whether you've maybe already you might have already launched your product and maybe you feel like it's a little bit too late to conduct market research. Well, I promise you that's not true. It's never too late to conduct market research. I've worked with teams and founders that have launched a product that didn't do so well on their initial launch. They came back, conducted some market research, relaunched that survey or relaunched that product after conducting research, analyzing the data, and found a lot of success. So begin the slideshow here. The way I'm going to start out and introduce our guest, one of our other guest speakers, having trouble with the deck. Just give us 1 second here. You should be seeing a slide here on your screen. It says how to conduct a market research survey for your startup idea. I'm going to confirm that that's the case. But before we get started, again, my name is Nick Freiling. I'm the Director of InsightsHub. Joining me, he's actually going to join in a few minutes. His name is Patrick Jones. He's the Director of Managed Services here at Question Pro. So Patrick probably has more experience than anybody, I think, on the Question Pro team designing surveys using our tool to conduct market research. So we're going to pull him in to demonstrate a few of the things that you're going to see me talk about here in a moment. I still need to confirm this slide deck is on and working. So first of all, what is a market research survey? I'm going to show a few examples here of surveys you might have gotten in the past that maybe you've thought this is market research. This is what it looks like to conduct market research. Here on the left side of the screen, you should see it's survey. It's something that Expedia used to send out for customers that use their hotels, booking, flights, rent a car, and this is something I think it used to be pretty popular. You see it all the time. I don't know if they still send out this particular survey, but it was very simple. It was a smiley face and a sad face. Did you like your room? Happy with your room? Yes or no? Happy or sad? And then it gives you it presents a few options to kind of explain just a little bit more about why you made the selection you made. On the right side of the screen here, you can see how responsive have we been to your questions or concerns about our products. This is another kind of a customer feedback survey. There's actually a mistake there in the survey question options, which is kind of funny. I only noticed that after I entered this into the presentation, after actually taking this survey from a big company. And then there in the bottom right of your screen is how likely are you to recommend us to a friend or coworker? Now, these are not market research survey questions. These are customer feedback questions. You probably get a lot of these kinds of surveys. They are not the kind of market research we're going to be talking about here today. You should see on the screen here three different, I kind of chose a mobile format. We have on the left side of the screen, we have two versions of the Pizza Hut logo. Now, Pizza Hut, they did kind of rebrand several years ago. They conducted a lot of research about that rebrand. You can probably imagine that Pizza Hut being as ubiquitous of a brand as it is, if they're going to do anything to their brand, they're going to be very, very careful and conduct a lot of research before they make any kind of change. So this is a kind of a real example of a survey that they did. Presents two different logo concepts and then asks you which one you like the best. In the middle there, it's Uber, which is obviously a very well-known app. But when they launched, of course, they were not very well known, and there was a lot of confusion about whether this is something you should use as a daily driver, a daily commuter, whether this is something maybe you use only on occasion when you're traveling, which is I think how most people use Uber. I don't think, at least personally, I've never used it as a daily commuting tool, but I think maybe in some pretty expensive cities it might make sense. And so when they launch this app and they're thinking about messaging and branding, it's really important that they get an understanding before launch of what people think about when they see this interface. What are they? What are they? What are they? How do they expect to use this? What do they think this is supposed to be for when they see what it looks like? And then on the right side, I live in Jacksonville, Florida. That's a picture of the Jacksonville Landing, which was demolished a few years ago. It was kind of a popular entertainment venue downtown. And what you see is a question. Actually, I think I kind of cut off the answer options, but the city asked some questions to voters, to residents about what they wanted to see in that location. What should replace this? What is now kind of a grassy area? This is a form of market research conducted by the municipality to get a better understanding before they enter into some business, before they launch into some venture, of what's likely to succeed, what people want to see in this place. And using market research in advance of beginning any type of project to get a sense of where they should kind of focus their efforts and their investment. So kind of a long definition of market research here is a market research survey is the quantitative analysis of the market for a particular product or service by way of consumers' self-reported sentiments and inclinations. I don't like this definition. It's a little bit too long. I prefer this. Consumers expressed feelings about your concept. Very simple, very straightforward. And I use the word concept very carefully. Like I said, you may be well along your journey with your startup to launching something, that you've launched it already, or you're about to do so. You're making some final decisions on pricing. You may be in the ideation phase, and it may be very early for you still, where this market research may very well make or break your decision whether or not to go into a particular market. If you have even just an idea in your head, that is the time to begin conducting market research. So what we're doing here, once before that, Kate Zabriskie had made this quote several years ago that I've loved. I kind of actually have it on my desk. The customer's perception is your reality. That's what we're doing here today. We are getting the customer's perception of our concept, of our idea, of our product, or of our brand. This is reality. I've worked with too many teams that, especially startups, they're really excited, they're really ambitious. What they have in mind is not something that the consumers are seeing. They have in mind a product that's in their head that they wanted to bring to market, or a service concept that they were really excited about. And then what consumers are seeing when they see that brand or they see that messaging is not what the founder has in mind. So there's this thing called the mere exposure effect, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it's kind of this phenomenon where when you look in the mirror in the morning, you wake up, hopefully you look in the mirror at some point and you see a face in the mirror, and it's your face. It's a face that you recognize. It's a face you're familiar with. And for most of us, I think it's a face that we more or less like to see. We see a photograph of ourselves, maybe making the same face, looking into the camera. And oftentimes we kind of cringe a little bit, or maybe we notice that, hey, that's not really what I look like. I'm making a strange face. My face isn't symmetrical, what have you. But the fact is, and maybe this is kind of scary, the photograph is a much better picture of what you actually look like to everybody else. What happens when you look in a mirror is your brain kind of automatically changes your appearance just a tiny bit. You see a face that is much more symmetrical than it is in real life. And you happen to make certain faces when you look in the mirror that you like, and that you kind of, that's something you enjoy seeing in the morning when you wake up. When someone takes a picture of you looking straight on, you can't get the immediate feedback of what you look like. You give a face that everyone else sees, and you see that and you kind of cringe. You're like, no, that's not a good picture. The fact is, the picture, like I said, is the better. The photograph is the better picture of what it is you really look like. Startups, products, brands, messaging are the exact same way. It's really, really important to get external third-party pictures of what your brand, product, service concept looks like, not to kind of sit in this hall of mirrors, always doing kind of your own intuitive analysis of, of whatever it is you think it is that you're trying to sell. In reality, the customer's perception is your reality. This is what should drive you, drive your decisions. This is what should shape and form the way you bring your product to market. So 3 benefits of conducting market research for your startup. Number one is to kill the echo chamber. I kind of just talked about that, the hall of mirrors, where you're just kind of getting your own feedback all the time. Number two is to impress or find stakeholders. I've presented alongside a lot of founders over the years, presented survey market research data to help them make a case for why their product is going to be a success, or why their startup idea, their service, whatever it is worth their investment. Investors love to see data. Stakeholders love to see data. And before you've launched, you really don't have a lot of data. So market research is really the only way to get the data that, you don't have sales, you don't have operations, but you can get consumers' feedback on your idea. And then number three is to make quick progress. Same with investors. Investors love to see that things are moving quickly. They love to see that things that you're gaining traction, and it's really important to kind of use market research in the early stages to identify your lowest hanging fruit interested consumers, and then cater and market everything to that group. Even if ultimately you're bringing a product to market that is for the general public, or it's for all females in the U.S. or all males in the EU, whatever it is. Market research helps you to identify the lowest hanging fruit, the most interested parties. Who are they? What do they look like? Where do they live? Where do they shop? To cater all of your initial kind of launch related marketing to the people that are most likely to help you turn around and show your investors that you've had some success. This is a free gift from Question Pro, a free 1-year research license for startups. There's a lot of ways to get this, but I just suggest that you reach out in the comments or in the chat for help with this. This is a 1-year license. You can take advantage of some of our other tools. I think there's some built-in audience into that license. So encourage you to reach out in the chat. We have people online who are going to respond to you and make sure that you get set up with that. If you are a real, registered startup and have real plans and intentions to use the things we're going to learn today to kind of advance your own market research journey. So first step, of course, designing your market research survey. How does that work? What does it look like? Well, there are 3 ingredients to a market research survey, kind of an initial or launch related market research survey. Number 1, who is my target market? Number 2, is my concept in demand? And number 3, what are people willing to pay? Now, you don't have to cover all 3 of those points in your launch survey. Some of the best surveys I've conducted over the years for startups were really kind of laser focused on answering just one of these questions. Who is my target market? Or kind of refining exactly who they should market their product to, demographics, behavioral. I've worked with surveys that are just testing demand. They know who their market is. Let's say it's, licensed accountants in the state of Florida, something like that. They know that that is the market, and they're just testing to see if those consumers, those buyers are interested. And then I've worked with teams that have just focused. They've maybe already launched. They maybe didn't have as much success as they wanted, so they want to reprice their product. So focused with consumers that maybe people that have already purchased or reached out and didn't purchase. How much are people really willing to pay for this idea? I'm going to pull Patrick in at that point to kind of walk through some of those steps in the Question Pro platform. So first of all, who is my target market? Demographics and behavioral. These are kind of the 2 sides of that coin. Demographic questions like, what is your gender? What is your age, your ethnicity, your household income, your highest level of education? It's really important to ask these questions, but not if they're not relevant at all to what it is you're trying to accomplish with your survey. If your product, like I said, if it's a product that's only for females, probably don't need to ask in the survey whether you're a male or a female, especially if you're targeting the survey only to females. It's not going to change the way you think about your product or how you're going to market it. So just to save space, pick demographic questions that might help inform you a little bit more about who's most interested in your concept, and leave the rest of them out. On the other side, we have behavioral variables, things like I have here on the screen. How often do you check your phone? How much do you spend per month on your dog? What email provider do you use? How often do you go grocery shopping? These questions are really, really important to help you better understand who your audience is, how they behave, and then ultimately serve as kind of the launching pads for segmenting your data in order to discover things like, where exactly should I market my concept? Should I market it on Facebook? Should I market it on Instagram? Should I market it to people that have Pixel phones, iPhones, Samsung phones? If you have a pet product, should I market it to people that already spend a lot on their dog? Or should I market it to people that maybe don't and maybe have never thought to do that, but this is kind of an introductory way to kind of spoil their dog with treats or whatever your product is? So these behavioral variables, think pretty deeply about how these work and what kinds of questions you want to ask. It's really important to think about segmentations, to think about ways you might cut the answers to this question, answers to other questions in your survey, by how people answered these questions. Again, whether they are big spenders on their pet or not, whether they use a Google phone or use an iPhone. If it affects the way you might message and market your product, ask it here at the beginning of your survey. Second section is my product in demand. So you've kind of covered the behavioral that are going to help you segment and filter your data later on. The next section is about demand. Do people want your product? Do they want your concept? The first step in this section is to ask about competing and similar products or alternative products. So I have here on the screen Coke and Pepsi. I can hardly tell the difference, but I know a lot of people can. These are two kind of obviously substitute goods. Very similar. They have brand loyalty, of course, but two products in the same category, almost in many ways, almost identical. Now, the biggest mistake that I see founders make is they come to me and they say, well, there's nothing like our product on the market. Absolutely nothing. This is the first thing of its kind. Fact is, even if that's true, it doesn't mean that the problem you're solving for those for your customers or your target market isn't something they're solving right now by some other way. Let's say you're introducing, let's say it's 2004, you're introducing the iPad. There's nothing else like it on the market. It doesn't mean that consumers aren't using a pen and paper, that they're not using a physical daily planner, that they're not using a laptop to do a lot of the things that they're going to be doing on the iPad. So ask about similar and competing products, get a sense of how people are solving the problems that you want your product or concept to solve for them in the future, even if there are no very similar alternative products on the market. Number two, present your concept. We're at the point in the survey when it's time to present what it is you're bringing to market, product, a service, some hybrid of the two. We need to present that concept to consumers. Now, in the Question Pro platform, you can add video, you can add image, you can add multiple images, multiple videos, and of course, you can describe what your product or what your concept is. We're going to focus right now on the written description. It's an important part of any survey, even if you're including a video, which I highly recommend. Even if you're including like multi-angle photos of the product, I also highly recommend that. But it's important to have a distilled and concise presentation of your concept written out on the screen. Here's one. iPod is a revolutionary way to experience your favorite music. Its cutting edge technology puts the world's library of music in the palm of your hand. No more waiting on CD shipments or slow downloads to start enjoying the music you love wherever and whenever you want to listen. Now, usually when I give this presentation in the room, physically in the room with people, I ask them, to raise your hand if you know what's wrong with this concept presentation. I can't see your guys' hands, so I'm just going to tell you. The fact is, this oversells the concept. iPod is a revolutionary way. Well, what do you mean by way? Is this a software? Is it a hardware? Is it something I hold in my hand? Its cutting edge technology puts the world's library of music in the palm of your hand. So does that mean you have every song in the world just because you purchased an iPod? No more waiting on CD shipments or slow downloads to start enjoying the music you love wherever and whenever you want to listen. Still ambiguous. Does this mean you carry it with you? Does this mean that it's something that just follows you around? I know it kind of sounds crazy because you're familiar, with this product. But when you're bringing something to market that is brand spanking new, it's really important to be as clear, concise, and specific as you can. Here's an alternative presentation of the same product that I think is a lot better. iPod is a handheld electronic Apple device that stores your music collection. Take it anywhere and plug in your headphones to listen anytime to any song you own. It's concise, it's specific, it's focused on features, not just benefits. It tells you what it is. It's a handheld electronic device. It's an Apple device. It stores your music collection, not the world's library of music. Take it anywhere, and in order to listen, you plug in your headphones. It's the only way you can listen to an iPod, if I remember correctly. So it's a much better, more concise presentation, and that's what we want to see in your survey. Now, a note on this: you want people to say no when you present your concept. I know that sounds crazy, but at this point, you're not a salesperson, you're not a marketer, you're a market researcher. Even if you plan to be the big salesperson for your product or concept in the future, right now you need to give people a reason to say no. If someone's not like Apple products and they don't know because of the first presentation that iPod is an Apple product, they say they love it, they like it, they pay for it, sounds great. But the fact is, when they see that product on the shelf with the Apple logo on it, they're not going to buy it. They just don't like it for whatever reason. You want to give people a reason to say no. Why? Because you want to find out who is the most interested in your concept, what we call the lowest hanging fruit. Um, if somebody doesn't like Apple and they don't like handheld devices, they don't like to listen to things on headphones, you don't want feedback from those people. You don't want those respondents telling you how much this product should cost, where they would expect to find it, because they just frankly don't care. By being concise and specific and giving people a reason to say no, you're able to focus on the respondents that are most interested in what you're bringing to market and the ones that are going to give you that early traction I talked about earlier in the presentation. Lowest hanging fruit, give people a reason to say no at this point in your survey. Once you've done that, you've presented your concept, you've asked about competing in alternative products, the way maybe people are solving this problem currently before they have your product in their hand. Assuming the price was reasonable, how likely would you be to consider buying this product? This is the next question you ask in your survey. Now, I'm going to pull in Patrick in a second to kind of walk us through exactly how to do this for a certain kind of product. As I do that, one second here. One quick note that this is for, and I think Patrick will kind of cover this, but this is for a product that is not something that is completely new and novel. There's kind of another way to ask that a question about a product that people have no experience buying, but I'll let Patrick kind of walk through that a little bit here in a moment.
Hey there, can you hear me nice and clear?
Yes, we can hear you. Sounds great.
Awesome. All right. So, yeah, my name is Patrick Jones, and I am the Director of Research Services here at Question Pro. And today, I'm really enjoying this presentation. I was just sitting here listening. Oh, yeah, that's time for me to join.
Yeah.
But yeah, great stuff so far. And so today, I will to sort of help Nick and his presentation on these key steps in doing market research. I wanted to talk about one of many different pricing questions that we can use. So today we're going to talk about the Van Westendorp type question, sometimes called a price sensitivity meter or price sensitivity measurement. And this is a question that is used really to find a price range. So one of the first things I want to kind of touch on is just that don't look at it as, what is the one number that it will give me? What is the one magic number? Like this will solve my question. It really is about a combination of items. So Nick did a great job of outlining, some of the things to consider. And a lot of those things are things that we want to consider in conjunction with the Van Westendorp pricing question. So the question itself, we'll take a look at it in just a moment, but we use it when we're introducing something that people have a pretty good idea about already. So in contrast, if you were launching a new product that when you explained it or described it to somebody, they maybe hadn't seen something like that before. You imagine, an Atari 2800, the very first video game system at home. People would think, well, I know what a TV is, and I guess I play games, but they wouldn't be able to mentally conceptualize exactly what you're describing very clear. They
Hmm.
would have never used something like that before. They would have never seen one on a shelf with a price tag on it that sets an anchor for what they expect. So for something like that, we need to use a different type of question. Today, what we're talking about is something where people have used something similar, or they are using something that accomplishes, the same goal or objective, like Nick touched on with the iPad versus a pen and paper. So they have an idea of what it does and how they do that already. It's something that they've seen at least out in the wild in some way where they have an idea. They don't wonder, is it worth $500 or 50,000? They have a very set point of in their mind of an anchor
Hmm.
of where it would be a really really cheap price, and that's going to be very important in the questions we ask, or where it would be a very very expensive price. That seems way just something's wrong here. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the question type. So it's I feel like I've said it 3 times. The Van Westendorp question.
Hmm.
I usually just start typing Van West in Google, and it'll finish it
Same.
for me.
I don't even know if I know how to spell it, but
I
yeah,
do now.
someone told me recently that's not a very common way to say it anymore, so I still use it. And what you're going to show us here is the actual Question Pro interface. Is that right?
That's right. That's right. So here we are. So imagine we were doing a survey on travel. So
Hmm.
um, sometimes I'm amazed how many travel agencies are still in business. And then I
Hmm.
plan a trip, and I do think, this is kind of a pain. Like all the
Yeah,
information and everything is available to me,
totally.
but it wouldn't be the worst idea to have somebody who's really, because you always feel like you're missing. Like there's got to be a better deal out there somewhere, but I just don't know and have the
Hmm.
time. So here we're imagining that we want to set, investigate the price range that someone would be willing to pay for a 1 week dream destination trip. So we'll start here just with a very simple setup where we say, okay, stop. Imagine a 1 week trip to your dream destination. It's open. Other people have different destinations, which would could really impact, how much. If we picked one destination, somebody might say, I wouldn't pay $1 to go there. So we're getting them to think about where they want to go, and then we get them, consider the sights, the sounds, the smells. Imagine the people, the culture, the food, sort of set the table for them. Um, if it was a product, a physically tangible product, you would want to have an example, just like Nick showed, where we might have a picture and a clear description of what it is. And again, it would be something that they would recognize, and then it would be describing the features and the tangible, objective, elements of it versus, promoting it in that first example. So with that question or with that in mind, whether it's a physical product or a service, we ask them 4 questions. So the 4 questions are really always the same, more or less. You can tweak them a
Hmm.
little, but basically we ask them, at what price would you consider the trip to be so expensive that you wouldn't consider paying for it? So this is essentially the upper limit. Anything above it is too much. Anything below, they might think about it. And then we get down to, what would you consider the trip to be starting to get expensive, but you would, it's not out of the question. You have some thought. So anything below, you can argue is getting to be almost lower than they would pay. So again, here they are. Anything up to this point, they are willing to pay, and up to this point, they think about it. They think about it, and then you get to the opposite side. So what price would you consider to be a bargain? So it's a good deal. And then what price would it be so low that you wouldn't think it would be very good? So again, this is really the basements. So the basement that they wouldn't even think about
Hmm.
it, and the basement that they would think, well, maybe. So this is going to create 4 pieces of information that we're going to use. So what's great about this question setup is that, as we mentioned, it will establish a range of prices. But there are a few pros and cons. So we touched on a few of them earlier, but the big thing is it's part of a strategy. It's not a strategy all on its own. So on its own, it's pretty isolated. So it doesn't allow for comparing different products. It's really about
Hmm.
one product, and you need to have the right sample market. So just like Nick touched on, you want to make sure that if you're asking people about their pricing, that you're asking people who are really potentially going to be interested in this product. So a lot of times, there's some very very simple mistakes made. in setting up this question and getting to it, by including people who really are just going to say, this is not worth anything to me, or people who are, they have an issue with, a brand or a solution that they're already loyal to, that they're not going to
Hmm.
change. So you've got to make sure you get the right sample before you get to this question. And then finally, it doesn't really talk about price differentiation. So like premium versions or other uh, features. If you're starting to bundle things together, it's about a single price in mind. So we can use it, but we have to use it in conjunction with some other research tools. So when we answer it, or what we look at is essentially, I'm sorry, I gotta preview this question. Yeah. So we enter a number for each of these values. Say it's too expensive, maybe 15,000 for a week. Yeah, definitely. And then maybe for what price would be a reasonable price? Well, starting to be expensive, maybe 12.
Hmm.
A great deal, 8,000, and then maybe too low, uh, we'll say 4,000. So
And just
if you mix them up, it won't let you. If I didn't, if you try to say, well, actually 4,000 is a pretty good deal, but 8,000 is too cheap, it will
mhm.
recognize no. It's got to be a scale that brings it down as we go to from highest to lowest.
Just so you know, we can't see your screen entering those numbers. I think
Oh,
you walked through it
uh,
pretty well. Are we gonna jump to the analysis?
yes. I'm sorry. It put a
That's
pop-up
okay.
window, and I'm sharing the window, and the window is not being
No, that's
shared.
all right.
I
I think
am.
you explained it real well. I think we kind of I don't know if you have to walk through it again, but I think the analytics is going to be pretty valuable.
Yeah. So, I'm. Sorry about that. But yeah,
That's
so you
okay.
basically enter these prices up here, and yeah, it won't let you put them in the wrong order. So you
Hmm.
can't say too expensive is $10, but very cheap is 25. It will
Right.
insist that you place them in that order. And then what you get when hundreds or thousands of people enter this information is you get a range of acceptable prices. So the graph, just to confirm, you can see this chart now, correct?
No, can't.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm
Might have
sharing
to share
the
that's
tab,
fine.
not the window. All right. So
As you're
in
pulling that up, I want to say that the data, the reason why you can't enter, and this is something we built into Question Pro, you can't enter in an answer that's higher for something you think is a good deal versus lower for something you think is expensive as a measure, a data quality measure to make sure that respondents do read and understand what the question is asking them.
Yes, exactly. So sorry about that. I guess I didn't realize you could share a specific tab. So yes, I had it on the tab, but not the entire window here.
Yeah, there we go. We
So
can see that.
yeah, so just to touch back, so the question will ask you these four price points, which will provide 4 points of data. Again, when you get hundreds and thousands of people responding, you get a range. And basically what this graph is showing, so this is the percentage of people, and then this is the price range. So 100% of people think this price would be so low that it wouldn't be a good experience. Anything under 2,500 or 2,000 here, 100% of the people too cheap. Whereas
Hmm.
100% of the people think about 35K too expensive.
Yeah, too
And then you've
expensive for
got the
me.
other. Yeah, yeah, definitely. But for, clearly for some people, 30, 33,
Hmm.
it's all right. So these are charted with the getting cheaper, getting cheaper, getting cheaper until nobody thinks it's too cheap at 25, and going down all the way to zero. Nobody thinks it's too expensive apparently at 11,200. So when these lines cross, we get our range of acceptable prices, and right in here, so is what we're looking for. So this is where the pricing for too expensive, too cheap, and then starting to be expensive but worth considering, and cheap but actually a good bargain, not too cheap, all collide. And what we get is if we use the Question Pro tool, we can actually just look right in the chart and see the different price points. So the point of marginal expense I mean, these terms are not so important, but it's basically the maximum price right here. So this
Mm-hmm.
is after this point, fewer and fewer people think it's think it's a good deal, and fewer people think it's a reasonably priced, or more and more people think it's overpriced. So when you get the too expensive and too cheap line, this is sort of the basement where, sorry, not the basement, but based on this called the misleadingly optimal price point. But as I said,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a single point. This is not the
Right.
one price. And the reason, and we add these ones. So this is a good where it's expensive but not too expensive, and cheap enough to be a good deal but not cheap enough that you think something's wrong. So this creates sometimes the indifference price point, as they call it here, but it has a few uh, differing names. But the idea is that this is basically you're around, as you can see, around the middle of this chart is your optimal price, somewhere between the most expensive and cheapest. But what really will affect that, of course, is what are the competitors doing? What do
Mm-hmm.
people, I mean, obviously Michael Jordan means something when people look at shoes or the value. There's branding. There's a lot of things to consider, but this gives us a range that we can work within. But it doesn't give us a single number. So what the bottom of the chart will tell you is what the acceptable price range is, 16.5 to 21.6. And then what you do within that will be dictated by some of the things that Nick touched on earlier, um, and some of the things that that are intangible, so that you need to find out by talking to people and seeing what they really really think. So, as Nick touched on, the one of the most important things is that the people who answer this question are the right people. So in the survey, if we were looking at asking people about taking 1 week in a trip to a dream destination, we might want to make sure that we're talking to travelers, people who have maybe traveled with our company before. So here we see in our demo survey, just a simple imaginary company, VoyageWise Travel. So they want to talk to people who either have already taken a trip with them or are planning to take a trip in the next 6 months. So, you know, simple is if they ask, have you taken a trip with us in the past 6 months? And they say yes, well, we're going to find out a bit more about their trip. If they haven't, well, um, we don't want to just terminate them right away, because maybe they're planning to take a trip in the next 6 months. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
they've already got money. So they're essentially as good or better than somebody who went before, because they're planning it. So we don't need to ask this question to everybody. So we can do a few different ways to skip past it. So we could do branching. So, okay, if they pick yes, skip down to the next question, which of the following ones. If they hit no, then skip to a question down at the end to terminate, or in this case, maybe to go to do you plan to travel? And for more complicated surveys with lots of different branches, this is what we would use. But it's a lot of work if we're just doing something and we just want to see one question. So in this case, what we can use is what we call show hide logic. So here, very simple. If they say no, I haven't traveled, then it asks them, do you plan to travel? If they any other answer, and it just hides the question. So for simple situations, we have a simpler method. And then here, we should say, if they did travel or they do plan to travel,
Mm-hmm.
they continue on to the Van Westendorp question. We don't need to hear about their previous travels, so we skips those. If they didn't travel and don't plan to travel again, then we boot them out of the survey. We don't need to hear about what they think about travel pricing. So if we look at it, it would. Oops. Here we go. All right. Um, all right. Well, this is, I don't know if you're seeing it. It's not loading. There we go. Oh.
Oh, it's been moved.
All right. Well, I had that open for a little earlier. So that will skip them to the appropriate question. Here we go. Just take this and put them here. All right. So we see here an introduction. And then, like I said, we could use complex branching, but a little
Mm-hmm.
cleaner look. If we put no, it shows the question. If we hit yes, boom, doesn't show the question. So
And again, this is to make sure the right people are answering the question. You don't want to hear from people that, you know, they have never traveled, they're not interested. Asking them how much they're willing to pay for that product is just not going to be really valuable when it comes to making the real time decision.
exactly. So, and then if they say yes, well, we're going to skip all of the travel questions, and we'll go right to the Van Westendorp question. If we did it the other way, and they did take a question, they did take a trip. Well, we'll find out about their trip to London, and we can get a series of questions
Hmm.
on the different areas. So we can use a few different types of logic to filter people out of the survey, or to make sure only certain people answer only certain questions. Um, and if we have one more second, I'll just mention that
Hmm.
the questions themselves, it could be a bit tricky moving many questions, 1, 2, 3, 4. If we look here at Washington, we got 4 questions about Washington. If I want to move them, I would have to pick each one and say, okay, reorder. But if I want to keep Washington as a section and maybe have some people answer this question, some people answer the Van Westendorp question, you know, I can use what we call a block to look at the questions as a group, and it allows us to reorder the questions in in sections or chunks, saving us lots of time. And also, if within a section I just want them to be randomized because I think that might impact people's responses, which one they see
Hmm.
first, I can do randomized questions within a block, or even have a block loop, repeat itself, to collect, depending on the type of survey, maybe to collect 2 or 3 responses as they go through a set of questions a few times. So we can, use logic to jump from one question to another, and we can use logic to hide and show which questions people see. And we can also use these blocks so that we can move survey sections around to change the order that people take them in, or to make changes within the section without having to go one by one by one through the
Question by
questions.
question. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, so those are all ways where you can make sure that when you get to the Van Westendorp question, which can be very useful for understanding pricing, but that you make sure that the data you collect is from the right people who have met the right conditions to answer that question, which is
Hmm.
very key.
Yeah, exactly. 100%, 100% right. I've been reminded of a survey I once conducted for, it was a product that was aimed at, mothers of new mothers, mothers of infants or of very young children. And we launched the survey, we had kind of in mind a targeting criteria. Um, and we launched a survey at new mothers, women between the ages of 20 and 40 with that had given birth maybe in the past year. Didn't go so well. The interest really wasn't there because of the price of the product. It was very expensive. But what happened is we decided to, because of the way we built the survey, we were able to open it up to different demographics. So we asked everybody their age, we asked everybody their income, and we asked everybody their status, whether they have children. Um, what we did is we just opened up the survey to people that likely fit kind of a grandparent profile, just by unselecting a few different things in the logic we had set up. And we included in that group a small cohort of new grandparents. And it turns out they were far more interested in the concept, probably because they have a little more discretionary income, they have a little more money to spend, and maybe to get that very expensive baby product for as a gift at a baby shower. And so they catered kind of all of their marketing to that audience. And because we had set up the survey logic like that, it was something we were able to just open up right away to a different audience, kind of just based on a hunch, see what happens, rather than kind of create a whole new survey just kind of to change the audience. So a lot of applications, a lot of ways to use survey logic like that. I'm going to jump back into my deck here. Thank you, Patrick, for that
Yeah, my
presentation.
pleasure.
So you should see here. There we go. Sorry for the delay. You see, present screen. There you go. How to get responses to your survey. So this is kind of where it all comes together. If you've designed a survey in your head, you've kind of written it out on paper, and then you've done what Patrick has showed us to do and program the survey into Question Pro. Now, how do you actually get people to take your survey? Well, the fact is, it's not easy. I've worked with a lot of teams that they ask their friends and their family, they ask their mom, they ask their coworkers to, hey, take the survey, let me know what you think about my product concept. What happens? Let me go here. Here you go. Fielding your survey. There's a hard way to do it. There's an easy way to do it. Hard way is what I just described, asking everybody you know, posting it on LinkedIn, sharing it on Facebook. The result is hardly any responses. That's just what's going to happen. You're not going to get much data, and you're definitely not going to get unbiased data from a large subset of the general population. You're going to get a lot of people that are telling you, hey, this is a great concept. I love it. Yes, I'd buy it. You go out to market, marketing to millions of people maybe, and you're going to get a really different response. So hardly any responses and very biased responses. The easy way, which does cost a little more, is to use a panel provider that guarantees a minimum number of responses for what I think is a very reasonable price given the type of data and type of value you're going to get from these respondents. So at Question Pro, we have a product called Audience. It's called Question Pro Audience. It's one of the tabs in our kind of product switcher. But after you design a survey, you're able to just jump into that audience product, click on the survey you want to send responses to, and Question Pro will do that for you. So you define who you're targeting. Maybe it's, U.S. general population. It could be males in the country of Germany, females in the country of Japan, whatever it is, whoever you're targeting. The targeting options and the kind of levers you can pull to really hone in on the type of person you're trying to survey. There's a lot of them, I promise you. Even if it's not on the screen, there's an option in the Question Pro Audience product to send a quick note to our team if it is kind of a complex, highly targeted audience. And I think you'll be pretty impressed with who we're able to target and send to your survey. So that's something I'll let you explore on your own. The startup license does come with, I think it's 100 free responses, general population, so you can kind of get a sense of what that looks like or what it might look like if you did open up your survey to 400, 800, 2,000 people that meet your target audience criteria. That's a really powerful sample size. It's a really powerful thing to bring to investors. Finally, how to analyze your survey data. This is something that I sometimes I even want to skip over this section because Question Pro, the platform, does a really good job at doing most of this for you. Data cleaning, generating charts and graphs that match the type of graph to the type of question that you ask, the pie, a column graph, a linear graph. But I'm going to walk through a little bit of kind of the higher level things to think about, even though once you've programmed and fielded your survey in Question Pro, you'll get a pretty cool looking dashboard that kind of explains the way everybody answered your question automatically. But here's some higher level points to think about as you look at that. So number one is cleaning your survey data. Now, it is true that Question Pro cleans a lot of this data almost in real time. Our audience product is really, really good at only sending high quality respondents to your survey. But something to look at once you get your data back, maybe you've mixed respondents from Question Pro audience with your own email list that you might have acquired through whatever means. And so those respondents, of course, you're not able to confirm the quality. You're not able to confirm that they're taking the survey seriously. So here's three things to look for. Number one are speeders. These are people that took the survey too fast. We kind of have a rule of thumb, which is if they took less than half the median time, you should flag that response. You can do this in the Question Pro platform. Don't throw them out necessarily. We're going to hold on to those and then see what happens with these other 2 points. Number two is flatliners. These are people who answered the same positional answer to every question or almost every question through your survey. Let's say you had 15 multiple choice questions and this respondent selected the first option or the option on the left hand side all the way down all 15 questions. Even if they didn't speed, they probably did, but even if they didn't, flag them. If they flagged on both speeders and flatliners, definitely throw that response out of your data set. And then number three is gibberish responses to open-endeds. Of course, if someone's just kind of mashing their keyboard when answering your open-ended questions, that's a response you probably want to throw out, but make sure to look and see if it seems like they gave high quality answers to the rest of your survey. Sometimes respondents will be on a phone and they've misspelled something, made a typo, and it's really not their fault. But this is mostly a concern when you're looking at data that you gathered from a different source. Again, Question Pro audience, high quality data. I've used that platform many times. But when you're looking at your raw data, especially before you take it to investors, make sure you do one quick data cleaning kind of pass through so that if somebody asks to see the open-ended respondents, they don't find something in there that's offensive or just something that's complete nonsense or gibberish. Three kind of ways to think about the analysis that you'll be doing on your data. Number one is top lines. This is just the general average answer to every one of your questions presented in the automatically generated Question Pro dashboard. This is really good for presenting averages, total feedback, average response to your concept or your product. Segmentations or filters is something we talked about before. So if you want to show how males responded to your product or your idea versus females, or low income respondents versus high income respondents, these are segmentations you'll want to run in order to kind of discover, who's the most interested in this concept. You go back to the question about how interested they are, and then you cut the data based on that question. You look at how different types of respondents answered those questions differently. That's something you can also do. It's called data filters inside of the Question Pro dashboard. It's under analysis, data filters. You can run as many of those as you want. And then clustering is a way to kind of group different types of respondents together. So if you have, certain persona in mind, like college students, on the west coast of the U.S., or new moms, like I said, let's say in the country of Great Britain. Those are different clusters. You can kind of analyze them together by creating data filters and grouping them based on how they answered those questions, or clusters kind of backwards based on people that are really interested in your concept and fit this other profile, versus people that are interested and don't. So these can get pretty complex, but there are a lot of options inside of the Question Pro analysis dashboard to do all of this on the platform. You don't have to have a degree in data science in order to run any of this. You don't have to have another external tool to get a lot of value out of this data. And then finally, presenting to stakeholders. How do you present this data? I've worked with a lot of teams that just kind of throw the dashboard up on a slide or up on a screen and scroll down, walk through. Well, the fact is most investors, stakeholders, and decision makers want to see a summary, an executive summary. What's the highest level kind of takeaway from this survey that they can walk away with as they have to make big decisions about marketing, about branding, or help you, if they're investors, help you to make those kinds of decisions, and or decide based on the survey whether they're going to invest in your concept. Methodology. How did you complete the survey? What platform did you use? Where did you get the respondents? How long did the average respondent take? Things like this I've seen asked in a lot of investor pitches, and it's not good when you don't really know the answers to those questions right off the bat. So make sure you have a sense of your sample size, average time spent in survey, what platforms you used, and where the audience came from. And then sample sizes, I already mentioned. Why can I trust this? You want to make sure you get enough data. With the audience product on Question Pro, you can survey 100 people, you can survey 10,000 people. It's really up to you. Rule of thumb is like 300, 400 people minimum is my suggestion for a survey that you're going to want to put in front of investors, or one that you're going to want to use to make decisions about your startup, about your business. You want to make sure this is a sample size big enough that you can trust it as you move forward, making some pretty big decisions based on what you've learned in the survey. So that's it for this slideshow. I see a lot of questions here. I also got a few questions in advance. Actually, this first one here looks like it's from Brian Holdsworth. Let's see if I can put that up on the screen. I'm not sure I know how to do that. Brian Holdsworth asks, James just answered. He asked, when building a sample request in the audience product, assuming we need additional screening questions not listed in your audience UI, should I count those additional survey questions in the total question count or length of the survey? I think it kind of depends on the audience and what that target looks like. There's some targeting we can do before your survey, before respondents get into your survey, especially if it's kind of like a specialty or niche audience. So I don't think you'll necessarily have to add a bunch of questions to the beginning of your survey in the platform itself in order to get a sense of pricing. Another question here, I had one pulled up from before that I thought was pretty interesting. It was about targeting, let me see here. So fielding on a tight budget. That's what it was about. How do you field your survey to the right audience if you're on a tight budget? Again, I've worked with so many startups. Tight budgets was like, something we talked about every single day. Respondents are not expensive. If you're launching a product that's to a general population audience, I 100% encourage you to just get a sense of what it costs on the Question Pro platform before you say, hey, this is too expensive for me. Those products, those responses are really, really cheap. I don't know what kind of the floor is right now on Question Pro audience, but rule of thumb is the broader the audience, the lower cost. It's kind of a per response cost. So I encourage you just to log in and check out the pricing. It'll be right there on the screen. You can pull those levers up and down, different levels of specificity on the targeting criteria. You'll see that as the target gets narrower, the price goes up. But I promise you, this is really affordable. If there's anything kind of main takeaway I've gotten from many years of running these kinds of surveys is users are usually pretty surprised at just how low cost it is to get this kind of data. One other question I had here, also presented earlier, it said, how important is market research for business startups? Now, kind of a basic question, but the fact is I've seen too many startups launch their product without market research, without having done market research, relying totally on their intuition, come back 3 or 4 months after launch and say, we were wrong about this, about that, about price, about packaging, and we need to do some market research. Now, the fact is they would have saved a lot of money if they had just run a small survey before launching their product at a price point that was just a little bit too high, or before launching their product with a brand that they didn't realize was too similar to the name of another brand in that same category or in that same market. So market research is essential. And the last thing I'll say about that is if you're pitching to investors, it is almost required that you come to the table or come to the presentation with a sense of what the market thinks of your concept via a survey. There's a lot of secondary research you can do, looking up stats about the size of a market, how many people purchased, a product very similar to yours last year. That's all fine. It's all good to have, but there's nothing like being able to walk into a pitch and say 81% of respondents, who saw my product, who saw how much it costs, said they would purchase this product, tomorrow. There's nothing as powerful as that. You can talk about market size, market cap, etc., but being able to show exactly what you presented to respondents on the screen to your investors, and then show them exactly how those people answered that question. There's really, really nothing like it. So again, 100% encourage you guys to conduct market research. It's really, really important. It's something the biggest and best brands are doing every single day. We know this because we see these surveys run on Question Pro on repeat every day, every week, every month, just gauging consumers' responses and reactions to every little change that brands make, to every new concept they're about to put out into the market. So one more question here that I marked from ahead of time. I think most of the ones asked here have been answered in the chat that I can see. And this last question is about NPS, or Net Promoter Score. And it says, is NPS still popular to assess brand? Are there any other widely accepted metrics, indices for B2B consumer feedback? So NPS is a very popular question type. I think the problem with it is consumers are really used to seeing it, and you see a lot of people kind of answer on either end of that question. So an NPS is how likely would you be to recommend blank. So if you presented your concept and you said, how likely would you be to recommend this to somebody that has this particular need? You'll see a lot of people answer 10. You'll see a lot of people answer 1. And that's really not what you want to see in that kind of a question. Now, I think sometimes it can be valuable, especially if you've been running it over and over kind of continuously as part of a long-term project, to see how those values trend and change over time. But if you're just doing a market research survey one time, one off, or maybe a few before your launch, it's not the best question type. And then when it comes to B2B, those can be tough. B2B, I always recommend a lot of open-ended responses, giving people the opportunity to kind of talk through their thoughts about your concept. If it's some type of, maybe SaaS app or something that's really going to be embedded into their workflows, you can still run a survey with that kind of audience. You can still even target those kind of respondents. But it's important to present a lot of detail. If it's a big decision, if it's like $100,000 a year purchase for, a subscription to this platform for everyone at your organization, give people a lot of detail, try to get a lot of feedback. And rather than maybe asking them, 50 different questions about what they think, give them an opportunity to write out their answers in an open-ended question box. I think, again, you'll be pretty surprised, pleasantly surprised at just how high quality a lot of those responses are. So I think we're just about at time. Thank you everyone for being here. Appreciate it. Please reach out on the chat with any questions. Reach out to myself or to Patrick anytime. You can find us on the Question Pro website, or we'll respond to the chat as well. So thanks everyone.